This is the Ezra podcast. And I have a fight breakdown for you today, and that is the return of Vasily Lomachenko versus Jermaine Ortiz. And going into this fight, people are, this is pretty much widely accepted as a tune-up fight for Vasily Lomachenko as he prepares to fight for undisputed title versus Devin Haney. This is the way everybody kind of picture it going. Now there is this questions if Devin Haney is going to continue to make the weight at 135 pounds. Look very drained going against Cambosos, but look good as when the fight happened, right? Looked dominant. Um, Still looked as dominant as he did in the first fight versus Cambosos. So we don't know for a fact that. I mean, there's no really hard concrete evidence that Devin Haney's going to move up. That would make a lot of sense to fight Lomachenko for undisputed 135, make a lot of money. It's what Top Rank wants. It's what Lomachenko wants. And Devin Haney's been looking for a big name, credible name at 135. And Cambosos is sure it put him to me in the lead at 135 right now for like the most credible resume. But Lomachenko would just separate him from the pack. It would just make for sure that him the number one guy. And I know a lot of people don't want this fight, especially a lot of people that are Devin Haney supporters. And that their argument of why this fight should happen is because Devin Haney's already, well, first of all, that Lomachenko, it really comes down to a grudge that Lomachenko kind of chose not to fight Devin Haney and did whatever he could to make sure that fight didn't happen before. And now that they're here and Haney has the belts, they want Haney to really stick it to Lomachenko and not do that. But that's just not the way fighting works. It's not the way if you run a business works. So you can't work out of spite. You got to work out of making decisions that's best for your career and best for your bank account, and that's what Devin Haney should look to do. But we're getting a little too far ahead. Let's get to this fight: Lomachenko versus Jermaine Ortiz. And one thing I want to point out: the first fight poster they had both guys on there, but it had like a flower in the middle of them, and it was the Ukraine colors, right? And I guess that makes sense with everything going on in Ukraine and Lomachenko. Uh, Being in Ukraine, serving in the military of some sort, coming here kind of makes sense to have those colors in the thing. But it was a poster that was really dedicated to Lomachenko, really was. Now you have a poster, the second one, and Jermaine Ortiz is nowhere to be found on it. I mean, it's right here behind you. There's no Jermaine Ortiz on it. Now this is a great poster. I will admit that 100%. This is a fantastic poster. But Jermaine Ortiz isn't on this. So if you're Jermaine Ortiz, right, and this is the thing, it's like people don't have strategic people in their corner. That maybe they're not your trainer, but they're just like, hey, let's just think about this strategically for a little bit. There's obvious plans for Lomachenko to fight either Shakur or Devin Haney, right? There's two options for him, and they're both of them are very great for Top Rank. And Lomachenko is got the story behind him. This is he's gonna probably possibly be his last chance at making a run for at least undisputed or just another big run. This could very well be his last chance. He's the story here, right? There's everything is for Top Rank that would benefit them could come after this fight if he wins it. If you're Jermaine Ortiz, you have to know that. You have to know that just beating Lomachenko will not be enough to get the score on that. And that it sounds unfair to say, and I'm not saying, it sounds like I'm saying it's fixed or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm not going that far. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things for Lomachenko after this fight. And Lomachenko's a name, and he's the A side, and he's a big A side to you. So you really have to take it to Lomachenko. You're really gonna have to go for it. And if you feel like you're in the lead, it's still not enough. And you gotta be looking to really honestly trying to get him out of there. It has to be that's your mentality. Even if you don't, it has to be a mentality that I was close to getting him out of there every round. That's the mentality you need. You can't just have a close fight here, a close competitive fight. You gotta really go for it. Now, do I see that as a possibility? I don't. I think that Jermaine Ortiz could be very, very competitive and win rounds early. I do. When he's at his full energy bar, when he's at his full capabilities and he's able to jump in and out, really use his athleticism, I think he could do some things. But the way Lomachenko fights, and a lot of people don't give him credit for it, and it's a thing that I always talk about is range pressure. Lomachenko is constantly in your range to punch, to make you defensive, to make you move off your spot. So he's constantly making you work, constantly making you think. And the working physically, it's tiring, but another thing is just as tiring is the mental work that's taking, and it's the mental of trying to see what he's doing, trying to adjust to his game, trying to counter, trying to set up your attack. Also, just the anxiety of constantly being in punching range, the anxiety of a man constantly being on you with that kind of pressure can really break you. And a guy like Jermaine Ortiz who doesn't have, to me, the discipline or skills or technique to really emphasize his natural talents. He doesn't have that, and he will really react, and he will really you could really force him to do whatever you want. He's really out of control in the ring, I would say, and that's the way I would describe it. So I think that when Lomachenko's putting him in his range, Ortiz is going to be very fast and athletic and explosive early, right? And he's going to do things and maybe keep Lomachenko home a little bit, but over time, when you're just constantly able to get that out of him, it's going to wear and tear on him. And then eventually, Lomachenko will eventually start getting his offense going and start really applying the pressure, start hitting him with waves of attacks, start hitting him with waves of pressure. Also, Lomachenko is defensively, he's aware. He's a defensively aware fighter. He's a very skilled all around. But with his style, constantly being in range, you're constantly going to put yourself uh, you're not going to be able to get out of there scot free. It's just not, and that's why I think a lot of fights are maybe even more competitive than people. They're more competitive than people expect. Like with the certain guys, like maybe the Luke Campbell or Pedraza, but it's because he's more of a pressure fighter. He's a pressure fighter that isn't smothering you with his work, but he's just putting it on you. As far as like, I'm just constantly in your range. I'm constantly working. I'm constantly doing something that is going to get you to break. Right. That's constantly what he's trying to do. And I think that he could very, 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 uh, very easily break Jermaine Ortiz in this fight just because he's just going to react. He's just a reactionary fighter, and I think that if he keeps applying the pressure and then they get to the mid rounds, and Jermaine Ortiz has a habit of jumping in and losing his footing and kind of jumping in and he's kind of getting squared, where he could get dropped a lot in this fight just by jumping in and not being in the right position to take a punch. And Lomachenko is pretty good at, taking advantage of those situations. Another thing too is that Jermaine Ortiz overshoots his shots a lot, and I expect them to be in a situation where he goes to clinch and Lomachenko really makes him pay for those situations. So I'm gonna pick Lomachenko in this fight. I think Lomachenko is gonna stop him late in this fight. I would say around the 10th round. I expect the Ortiz to show some things early, but as the fight goes on, the pressure, the thinking, the reaction he's going to have against a guy like Lomachenko, I think Lomachenko is going to just put too much for on him. Too much weight is going to hit him. Too much pressure, and he's going to give in. Now, what chance does Jermaine Ortiz have of pulling this fight off? Like, what would have to go? He's got athleticism. He might be more athletic, more explosive. At this point, than Lomachenko, right? And if you've seen what the last time we fought someone like that, we go Teofimo Lopez, he kind of stood home, right? So if Ortiz can show something to Lomachenko that make him cautious to stay home, and he can redo that and reuse his legs and push Lomachenko around and explode into shots with him, maybe he could take enough early rounds, right? That when Lomachenko does kind of figure out something, because he will figure out something in the fight, or figure out his range, or figure out his timing, or figure out something in the fight, it'd be too late. It's similar to the Teofimo fight. But like I said, I really feel like it's going to be a hard fight for Ortiz to win a decision if the fight goes well for him. I really do. So I really think he has to put it on him and be consistent in this fight. But I don't think that's going to happen. I really think that Lomachenko will just cover too much range on him and just be on him too much and making him work too much. And I just think eventually, 4th, 5th round, he's just really going to hit a wall, and it's just going to be a lot for him. And mentally and everything, we're just going to eventually just get eaten up by Lomachenko. I think Lomachenko's going to win. I think Lomachenko will go and fight Devin Haney, and I think that's going to be an excellent fight, an excellent matchup. And I think this is an interesting matchup. You also have Robisi, oh God, I can't remember his name. Just look it up real quick. Robisi Ramirez. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Robisi Ramirez on this card, and he's coming up at the 126-pound weight division. He's a very exciting fighter, so he's another guy to watch out. A lot of prospects on this, especially Torres is also on there, heavyweight prospect for Top Rank. There's a lot of star qualities. So it's an interesting card to watch. You know, it's going to be similar things where they're building up all like their prospects and everything like that. But the main event is interesting to see where Lomachenko is, to see if the athleticism, how he's going to do with it. Because remember, the fighters he's going to fight the Shakur Stevenson and David Haney are very athletic fighters, very in their prime. Use their legs. So a guy like Ortiz, who doesn't have the skill or isn't as smart in the ring or doesn't have like the little tactics to add to that, but he does have the athleticism and explosiveness that could probably match these guys. So that's where this gets very interesting. Thank you guys for listening. It's been the As Raw podcast breakdown edition.